Hey guys, this is Laura from the Sketching Pad. I'm going to show you how to do hair texture on a pottery item. So this is our dog. He's super cute. We're going to demonstrate the hair texture on him. And this technique works with both the acrylic kit and the glaze kit. So it doesn't matter which one you picked. This technique will work the same. So I'm going to be demonstrating first off, I'm going to be demonstrating with the acrylic set, but I'm going to be using our more neutral palette. You don't have to use the neutral palette, like if you want your dog to be blue or purple, that's fine. The techniques that I'm going to show you work for all color families, so just keep that in mind. I will make notes as I go along about what to do if you're choosing a different color. I'm going to let you know the things you're going to need. Besides your paint palette, you're also going to need your flat brush and your small round brush. From your house, you're going to want a cup of water. This is just an old pasta sauce jar. You are going to want a rag or a paper towel or something of that nature. You are going to want a paper plate or a styrofoam plate or something like that to mix your colors on. And that's about it. You may want a hair dryer just to dry your piece in between steps. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to make note of in the difference between acrylic and the glaze kit is that with acrylic, with this technique, you're going to start off with what's called a base coat, and that's just coating the whole thing in the same color. The first difference between the acrylic and glaze is that the acrylic only needs one coat in most cases, sometimes two, but mostly just one. And the glaze is going to need a total of 3 coats. That's very important because it's going to look really streaky when fired. The next difference is that the glaze looks more pastel, and it's a little bit harder to see the end result while you're working on it, just because when you're firing it, it does boost up the color quite a bit. So just trust that you're doing the technique right based on what you see me doing here, and it will come out fine in the end. And when I'm doing my base coat for acrylic, I'm basically just going to cover the whole thing with the same color. But when you are doing the glaze, you want to avoid areas that you want different colors. So like his collar here, if you want his color to be blue or red or something, and we're going to do our dog brown, you don't want to paint the collar brown. The glaze does not cover as easily as acrylic does. So for me, I'm just going to paint everything brown. I might leave like the bone white, and maybe his eyes white, but it wouldn't really matter if I covered those because you can always add them back. It's just a little more difficult to do it with glaze. You can add stuff back with glaze. It just doesn't cover as nicely. So I would recommend avoiding areas that you want to be like blue or white or his ears, like if you want his ears a different color, you could leave those blank too. So for the base color, I'm going to mix some brown and white together. I'm going to take a scoop of my white from my white pod and a scoop of my brown. I start off with kind of equal quantities of each color, and if I decide I want it to be a little darker, then I add a little more brown. If I want it to be a little lighter, then I add a little more white. It's helpful if you mix a lot of your colors, so that way you don't have to remix if you don't like to remix the color so that you don't have like a hard line between the two. It can be a little more difficult to get it the same. So just mix more rather than less. And then you're just going to take, I'm using my flat brush, and just coat the whole thing. And I'm just going to leave my bone white, but it, like I said, I'm using acrylic. It doesn't really matter if I do. Just paint the whole thing that light brown. Your brush strokes don't matter a ton, especially now with the glaze. The brush strokes go away with the glaze. So if you're like getting some weird lumps, that happens sometimes with acrylic, with glaze. But it doesn't matter because firing it smooths everything. You can always switch to your small brush if you're like having trouble getting around the eyes and everything. And I'm painting over the collar because I'm using the acrylic. All right, so I'm going to finish painting this guy, and then I will show you what we're going to do next. All right, guys, so I have my base coat. Just for fun, I left the bone in the eyes. Even though I'm using acrylic, I could have painted over those, but I just wanted you guys to be able to see his face a little bit better. So now we're going to start with mixing our two other colors for the hair. So we've still got a little bit of our base color, and the key to making the hair is to have shadow and highlight and the base color. So we're going to start by mixing our shadow color. I'm going to swap to my small round brush. You can mix this color with your large round or your flat brush if you want to. It will protect these little bristles a little better if you do. So we're going to mix our shadow color by mixing a little bit it in the corner of the base color and just adding a little brown to it. Now we don't want to get rid of our base color because we might need that later. So that's a pretty good shadow. It only needs to be a little bit darker than the base. Okay, so now that you have that, you can rinse your brush. So also, guys, I'll make a note here. If you are using a color other than brown, so you can kind of see that a little bit better. Like if you're using purple or something, you're just going to mix a little more purple into that base color. Or you could just use the straight purple out of the container for your shadow color as well if you don't have a light enough purple to make it any darker by mixing more purple into it. So you're just going to do the same thing we're doing here, but with that opposite color. So I'm just adding more brown to a brown and white mixture. If you've got a white and purple mixture, you're just going to add more purple to it or use it straight out of the container. So now we're going to mix our highlight by grabbing a little bit of white and mixing that in the corner of our base color as well. So we're basically having a range here from light to dark, light, medium to dark. And then you're going to take your round brush. I'd rinse it out at this point too because we want our colors we want our brush to be nice and pointy for this. And we're going to take our dog or cat or whatever animal you have, and you're going to do strokes down like this. You don't want to have your strokes going in all different directions. You want them to go in the same direction. Or like on his chest, you want them to go in the same direction like that. So I'm going to start with my shadow color, and I'm going to work on the back of him. So you're just going to take and do little Maybe you can see that. Little dashes. You can kind of see that like that. So you can see how that's starting to come together, and you can layer them too. You don't have to have them in like not touching each other. It looks a little more natural if you do that. All right, so now that I've got like this little section done, I'm going to swap to the highlight and show you what to do with the highlight. You can rinse your brush out, you can kind of wipe it off, then you'll take your highlight color and you're going to add that in there as well. So you're going to have some variety of hair colors. And again, you can overlap it with the shadow as well. Okay, so we've got some good highlights. Now, if you feel like, oh, you've got too much or it's not blending the way you want it to blend, you can take your base color that you used at the beginning and you can kind of cut into your hair with that and it'll break it up a little bit. It'll just add a little more variety to it. A little more texture, I probably should say. So I went back to adding a little bit of highlight. I want to add a little bit more right here near his collar. Okay, and so you would just continue that all the way around. With his legs, or at least his back legs that are kind of scrunched up like that, you would do the same kind of going down on the front legs. But for the side legs, you may want to do your strokes kind of with his leg. So kind of follow the shape of his leg. You can kind of see that. So right in there. I'll add some highlight. So if you're using the glaze, you have a white in your kit, so you would just be mixing your white with whatever hair color you decide for those highlights. And then a little more of your base color. So kind of like that, and you would continue that all the way around the dog, and then you would start adding your details. I'm going to do a little bit more for you guys on the chest area. Feel free to rinse your brush out as needed. It will reform the tip of your brush and make it a little easier to use. turn it upside down. Yeah, feel free to twist your pottery piece in any direction that will make it easier for you to see what's going on. Now I'm going to add some highlight. Okay, and I'm going to take the base color and I'm going to break it up just a little. All right, so I will finish this up and then I will show you guys what our result looks like. Okay, so this is what we have so far. So you can kind of see that I like to put a little bit more highlights on the tops of things that need it. So like on the top of his chest, on the top of his head right here, on the top of his legs. And I also like to put a little bit of shadow, a little more of that brown in some of the creases here. So what I did with that was I just took that brown, that dark brown that we mixed, and I just put it like right in the crease, and I put it like in the crease right in here. If you need it a little bit darker, you can just use the straight brown out of your container. So I'll show you how that works over here. So I don't have that crease right now, but if I take my small round brush and I just kind of let it flow in that corner, that just adds a little bit to the three-dimensional quality of it. You can see I did a little bit more brown, a little more dark brown right in the corners here. And keep in mind that acrylic paint usually dries a little bit darker than what you have mixed. That is not the case with glaze. Glaze is kind of just a completely different thing. I'm going to add a little bit more highlight to the top of his nose here. And a little starburst coming from in between his eyes and going out like that. A little bit more highlight maybe right in here. And maybe a little bit right in here on his cheeks. All right. I'm going to add a little bit right here on top of his lip, just to make his little face stand out just a little bit more. All right. Of course, yours is going to be a little different if you're not doing the dog, but I generally like to put a few more highlights in my hair on like the tops of things and less towards the bottom, like right in here. But those are just optional. You don't have to do it that way. All right, guys, I couldn't help but do his little face so that you could see how it was coming out and how well the texture looks with it. I'm going to give you guys one more animal or like creature pro tip on how to make it look really cute. If you take a little dot of white and put it like in the corner of the eye, like that, it just makes it look so much more lifelike. You can even do like a little highlight on the nose, like that. So that adds just a whole lot more and doesn't take a whole lot of time at all. You may find that with like doing the ears or tail darker that it needs more than one coat, but you may like it a little bit streakier, so that's kind of up to you. So you have finished the little fur tutorial. Congratulations, guys. If you ran into any issues or you would like to ask a question of any kind, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love, love, love to hear from you, and we'd like to help you in any way that we can. We're here for you. Just send us a private message on Facebook or email. You can call us if you want, though Facebook is probably the best way to get a good thorough response. And if you guys finish something, even if it's not like a pottery thing, we would love to see any artwork that you're working on. Post on Facebook, tag us, send us a private message. However you want to send it to us, we would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.